we're on. Good morning, councillors, executive, and good morning to those joining us in the digital gallery again this morning. It's my privilege to declare the ordinary meeting of the 27th of April 2021 open, and in doing so I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which our magnificent Scenic Rim Regional Council is formed, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and again congratulate them on their continued nurture of their culture. Councillors, I note that we have some absences today. Councillor Swamborough has requested an exceptional circumstance absence this morning due to personal circumstance, and that has been granted. All other councillors are present. I note that we have apologies from the GM People and Strategy and from the GM Asset Environment. I note that Mr. Osman is sitting in as the delegate for the GM Asset and Environment. Thank you for joining us. That being said, I now believe we have Pastor Peter Meyer joining us to lead us in prayers. Councillor, good morning, Peter.
Hello, how is everyone this beautiful morning?
Excellent, thank you. We're enjoying the delights of this change of season.
It is glorious, isn't it? Thank you for the opportunity to be able to pray for you and encourage you. It is exciting to see what is happening in the Scenic Rim and just new developments and all sorts of opportunities and visions for the future. So let me pray. Loving God, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you that in the midst of whether we're out and about or whether we're confined indoors, we know that it is a day made by you. And Lord, we thank you for this season of autumn as that change from summer to winter, and the days are just so beautiful. And Lord, we just pray that you would lead and guide our council members. We thank you for them. We thank you for the responsibilities that they have pledged to take hold of and lead well. And Lord, we pray that they would lead with honour, with truth, with love and respect, Lord God, that they would seek the good of the people within this region, Lord God, and the future. We thank you for what is coming up for the council members in their leadership, Lord God, and what is before them. Lord, may they make wise decisions for going ahead of our community, Lord God, and our region. And Lord, may they just know peace in the decisions that they make, that they would shine, allow you to shine into them, Lord God, so that your truth would be evident in them and through them, that they would be gracious in their decisions that they make and the conversations that they have with the people of our community. And Lord, I just pray a blessing on each one of them, that they would just know your hand at work within them, that they would know that you are leading them and guiding them in the decisions that they make as a group, but also individually for their own families. Lord God, we pray that you would protect them and care for them. And Lord, as they seek to be protection and caring for those in our community and the Scenic Rim, may you bless and encourage them, we pray. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Thank you indeed for joining us this morning. We value very much your prayers and support. Understand that you may have other matters to attend to, but as ever you are welcome to continue to join us digitally today if you so desire. Otherwise, we look forward to engaging with you again in the near future.
Thank you so much. No, I've got another meeting I need to get to, I'm sorry, but yeah, be having a wonderful meeting yourselves, and yeah, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Councillors, turn to item 5 of our agenda, dealing with declarations of prescribed or declarable conflicts of interest by members. I note in advance, councillors, that that item, there will be a change of agenda, and item 10.3 will be removed shortly by the CEO. So any consideration of conflicts regarding that matter won't have to be brought forward. However, are there other conflicts? Councillor McGuinness?
Yes, Mayor, I declare a declarable conflict of interest for item 10.1. That is the 2020-2021 Scenic Rim Community Grants Round 2. This declarable conflict of interest arises because I'm a member of the Harrisville Lions Club. I wish to participate in this discussion in relation to this matter. I acknowledge that eligible councillors must now determine, pursuant to section 150 ES of the Local Government Act 2009, whether I may participate in this decision about the matter, including by voting on the matter, or 2, I must leave the meeting, including an area set aside for the public, and stay away from the meeting while the eligible councillors discuss and vote on the matter. I will leave the meeting for eligible councillors to discuss.
Thank you, councillor. Are there any other declarations? Thank you. For the benefit of the digital gallery, Councillor McGuinness has left the room. Councillors, I open the floor. Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that Councillor McGuinness remains in the chamber for the discussion of 10.1.
Councillor, seconded.
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor West, any discussion?
Just, I think, to the fact that Councillor McGuinness is involved in many community groups, but this one he is a member only, which means that he doesn't need to. He doesn't have a prescribed conflict of interest, and it is just to be noted that he is a member of that organisation, the Harrisville Lions Club.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against?
No, but can I just note that when Michael moved the motion, he only said remain in the chamber. It didn't mention voting when he spoke.
Happy to add and voting, so the motion would include as updated. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Put the motion. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Could you please assist and recover? Welcome back, Councillor McGuinness. The meeting has supported your request to stay for the consideration of that item and for the voting. Thank you. Okay, we move to item 6. There are no announcements or minutes for the meeting today. Item 7, we have no deputations or petitions to be tabled today. We come to item 8. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, you've had those available for consideration. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held 13th of April 2021 be adopted. I seek a mover.
I'm happy to move them.
Can I ask a question first? Or do we move first?
Move first.
Okay, move first.
Mover first. Moved by Councillor McGuinness. Now, Councillor McConnell, questions?
Just a quick one on item 10.6, page 95. There's commentary underneath the two motions. I've gone back and had a look at all the previous minutes in the past. It doesn't seem to be commentary on any of the motions, so I'm just wondering if that's. Well, I'm going to move a motion that we remove the mayoral comments on page 95 at the bottom of the page.
Particularly, Councillor, you're referring to the comment below the two motions?
Correct, Mayor.
Happy to be, that what did form part of the meeting, and but I'm happy to be guided by councillors. Councillor McConnell's proposing an amendment to the minutes to remove that comment.
Mayor, if I can comment, I take Councillor McConnell's point. I think once you start some commentary, is every comment that's made at the meeting recorded then in the minutes? I know different organisations do minutes in different ways, but I think I take the point that it's a precedent there, and there's other comments might want to be councillors might want other comments made there that they've made, but I think it's probably better off not being there.
So we have an amendment proposed by Councillor McConnell to remove the single sentence comment at the bottom of page 95. A seconder to that? Councillor Chalk, wishing to speak any further, Councillor?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Anyone wishing to speak against? We put the motion then. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Noting that amendment now, we return. We have a motion on the table that now needs to be amended to note that and we'll just ask the support of the mover here, that the minutes be adopted with the amendment just moved. So we're just...
Yes, Mayor, I agree with that.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell. Any further commentary? Wish to speak to your motion at all, Councillor McGuinness?
I'm right, thanks, Mayor.
Yeah. Anyone wishing to speak against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 9. There is no business before the meeting today arising from the previous minutes. So we move to item 10. Before we commence dealing with the business of the meeting today, the CEO has an administrative action to undertake. CEO.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor, councillors, executive officers and members of the public listening at home. I'm advising that I'm withdrawing item 10.3 from today's agenda. Specific details can be provided by the General Manager, Customer and Regional Prosperity. The item relates to the MCU 19-133 change representations, negotiated decision notice, and I'm happy, Mr. Mayor, if councillors sought further detail from the General Manager on this item.
Perhaps ask the General Manager to provide the clarification of the aspects.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors and executive and those listening online. Late last week, I was advised by by officers regarding this report and sent a communique to council and executive that we may need to withdraw this report. After the addenda was published, officers received advice from SARA that the applicant is required to obtain further referral sponsors from SARA, in particular Transport and Main Roads, as per this, as part of the change application. It was the advice of officers at the time that it would be prudent for councillors to wait until this has been provided. This has been obtained before any decision on this matter can be made, as it is one of the key conditions being changed relates to the driveway access from a state-controlled road. So on that basis, I support the CEO's withdrawal of this item.
Thank you. For those in the digital gallery, if you're wondering why there was a startled sound at the end of the comment from the GM, the amplification system inside the chamber kicked in just before her last comment. Thank you for that clarification, and thank you for that advice of that administrative action, CEO. So we now continue to item.
Excuse me, Mayor, could I just ask for the benefit of our listeners, just to for the GM to outline that SARA is an organisation.
You mean what's the type? What does the
yes,
what does the initial
people
stand
don't think
for?
SARA is a person as opposed to an organisation.
It's the state authority of referral agencies. So it's the coming together of all referral agencies that might be party to any applications that are submitted through the planning process as a part of the planning scheme and the state planning instruments.
Thanks for that clarification.
Transport and Made Roads is the example I used in this one.
Okay, we move to item 10.1. GM, I believe we're back with you for the introduction of this report.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Today, item 10.1 is the 2020-2021 Scenic Rim Community Grants Round 2, and I have with me officers Deborah Moore and Kathy Forrest, and I believe Kathy is going to present this report to Council today.
Thank you, and good morning, Mayor and Councillors and Executive. This report is, yes, round 2 of the 2020-2021 Community Grants Program. And we are still, we've transitioned the program to Smarty Grants, so we've had some good feedback from the community groups that the online grants management platform has been well received by applicants. And applications were called from round 2 on 1 February 2021 and closed on 26 February 2021. The grants program was promoted extensively, including Council's website and other online platforms. And local newspapers, grant information sessions were held in Boona, Beaudesert and Tambourine Mountain to coincide with the grant round, and all sessions were well attended. The information sessions also provide an opportunity for community groups to learn more about the grants program, and the quality of the applications continues to improve as a result of those sessions. And they also provide an opportunity to assist with any Smarty grant inquiries and or the online application process and any general community inquiries. That it serves to be a very valuable process for community groups to meet with council officers. There were 33 applications received for round 2, totalling $121,305.36. As the program has been oversubscribed, unfortunately not all projects could be funded. We present to you the following minor grant applications that are recommended for approval in the table in the report. And again, as round 2 has been oversubscribed, several applications were unable to receive funding. And as always, we will continue to work with all of those community groups who have applied to build capacity of the community sector. I'm happy to take any questions from the councillors and exec on the report present to you.
Councillors, any clarifications required to the report? Councillor McConnell.
Just a quick one for the manager. Of the grant applications that weren't recommended, can she just provide some commentary on how many of those were not well made or did not provide enough detail to be assessed?
Thank you, Councillor. With all those that were unsuccessful, we will send out correspondence back to those organisations, and they are more than welcome to contact our officers and to seek clarification as to where they might improve or what could be done a little differently in the next applications, and we're more than welcome to work with them around those. Some of them were still well made applications, but because of they were oversubscribed, and the panel, when they did their scoring, they just may have missed out within that scoring and for the amount of money that was there. So we cannot say that all applications that missed out were not well written, just that some may have missed out because of the way the scoring and how much money we had in the pot.
Has there been an increase in the applications being well made since moving to Smarty Grants, or has that stayed the same?
No, there's certainly been a remarked increase in how they've been written, and it is very heartening to see how well we're getting some applications in and how well written they are.
Thank you.
Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is along how the applications are assessed, and I note that being oversubscribed by 2 is both a great response from our community, but also a challenge for us to deal through that process. So my question is in relation to the assessment criteria, and are there any weightings to organisations that are wholly volunteer run compared to not-for-profit type organisations that with paid staff as well as supported by volunteers?
Because all applicants in this round were eligible to apply, there's no weighting put on whether they're not-for-profit or have mainly volunteers. There's no weighting put against that as a criteria. The criteria is around the project and how they answered the application in regards to that project and the benefits that it has to the community. So as long as they're all not-for-profit, we don't distinguish between whether they're volunteers or have some paid workers, or what that looks like in way of what payments some of them may receive.
Okay. Any other clarifications, councillors? If not, GM, I'll ask you to introduce the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. Recommendation today is that Council approve the allocation of minor grants under the 2020-2021 Scenic Rim Community Grants Program Round 2 for a total of $60,045 as follows. And there's a reasonably long list there, Mayor, that I probably won't read out. And that the second recommendation is that Council provide relevant feedback and advice to unsuccessful grant applicants to continue building capacity of the grant community sector.
Thank you, GM. Councillors, I seek a mover. Councillor West, thank you. Any further questions to the report? Councillors, if not, I seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell. Councillor West, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say there's a very widespread group of community groups throughout the whole of the Scenic Rim area, which is really pleasing. And also the fact that the Smarty Grants program is now in action has really made such a difference. And the feedback from the community groups when you're at the meetings is that they really like that system. It's very simple to use. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion as noted, including the full list. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. For those in the digital gallery, the detail of that list is available in the agenda of today's meeting and will be available in the report of the meeting. So for that further detail. We move to item 10.2 and GM, I believe we remain with you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Item 10.2 today is the MCU 20/032. It's development permit for a material change of use for 10 tourist cabins at 28B Guysman Street, Tambourine Mountain, described as Lot 33 on RP 910372 and Lot 1 on RP 101157, Access Easement A. Today I have with me the Acting Planning and Development Manager, Heather Nielsen, who's with us. I also have Principal Specialist Wayne Jarrett, and we've now had our planner join us, Kobe Lane. So I'm going to hand over to Heather to open this item.
Thanks for the introduction. So, as you know, it's a material change of use for 10 additional cabins at the Debtors Rainforest Retreat at Guysman Street. The development's impact assessable, and it's been assessed under the relevant assessment benchmarks of the Beaudesert Shire Planning Scheme. It was subject to submissions, and the development is recommended for approval subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. So I'll hand over to Wayne Jarrett to provide details of the conditions and the key aspects of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. The site is has been said, is Debtors Rainforest Retreat. There's 10 existing cabins. The application is for 10 further cabins, and the cabins will be split, 5 on one side in the northwest corner amongst the avocado orchard, past the restaurant and reception building, while the further 5 will be located in the southeast corner at the entrance of the property currently occupied by the manager's residence, which is to be demolished. The applicant submitted specialist reports assessing stormwater management, water rehabilitation, waterway rehabilitation, landscaping and bushfire management, and access to the tourist cabins will be from the existing driveway from Guysman Street within the access easement there, which is conditioned to be sealed. As Heather explained, public notification, the application was made with the 10 properly made submissions and 1 not properly made, 8 raised concerns and 2 were neutral. The main issues raised concern dust from the access easement, operational management of the facility with the manager's residence being demolished, water supply, which is a common concern in that area, and wastewater disposal. We have Kobe Lane here for any specific questions relating to the application.
Thank you. Councillors, any points for clarification to the report before you? Councillors, Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Wayne, for that introduction to the application. Just a clarification on a couple of conditions, if I may. You touched on condition 12 about the sealing of the access easement. I just wanted to confirm that flexible pavement with AC seal, I think is either bitumen or asphalt. That's the standard, is it?
There's no real standard for this easement. Its conditions are quite old, but we felt it prudent to further condition the easement in terms of sealing it. There's ways you can do reinforced concrete paving. The asphaltic concrete AC steel is compliant with our standard.
Okay, so that should minimise the dust impact on the neighbouring properties.
That's right, dust and the routing out of the driveway is sometimes quite difficult to navigate.
Yes, I have inspected it, and it is. I'd imagine having it sealed will both provide a lower noise as well as dust, I would expect.
That's correct.
Yeah. And just in relation to that, and I think it's just come up on the screen, can I just confirm that that distance of that access easement is actually from the end of Guysman Street through to the entrance to the property, or right through to where the proposed new cabins are. Just trying to get an indication of the extent of that condition.
The easement starts after the end of Guysman Street, so that's including within lot 1.
Yes. So the condition will require the sealing of that full extent of that easement, and then does it carry through to there's a little handle, if you call it, into that block. Is there requirement for that to be sealed?
I understand that's already sealed.
That's already sealed.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you. I have another question in relation to condition 21, and that is the fencing along the waterway rehabilitation area. And it's probably a bit of clarification for me. It mentions about a bollard every 50 metres or a 50-metre interval, and at each change of direction of the waterways. I was just trying to understand the value of a bollard with 50-metre intervals.
Part of the recommendation is for bollards at every 50 metres, as you've noted, and every change. It's one of 2 recommendations for the rehab of the waterway. This is for residents who do decide to venture out as a part of the tourist cabin development. It is a precautionary measure as to not to proceed further. So this would be for those residents not to proceed any further into that waterway area.
So I'm picturing a timber pole standing by its singly, and then another one 50 metres apart. Is there some connection between the two? Is it a safety? Is it a waterways prevention from access? I'm just trying to understand what that might look like.
It's a yellow steel bollard with a red stripe around the top of it at every change. Though 50 metres is indicated, there are a number of changes, so it average about 40 metres per bollard.
So it's more to alert rather than prevent access?
That's correct.
And that's an accepted standard for waterways alerting device?
There is no standard.
Okay, righto. So is 40 or 50 metres an appropriate width between bollards to provide that safety awareness of this access point?
It's not so much a safety awareness, it's to aware the public not to proceed any further, not to damage the waterway.
Do you have a further question? Maybe while you consider that, Councillor, does anyone else have a point of clarification? Councillor McConnell?
Just a quick one on the sealing of the easement. Given the fact that it'll be sealed after construction and before the commencement of the use, do we require a condition to prevent dust?
If you look to condition 22, it mentions dust suppression. So during the construction phase, we have noted that the applicant could do wetting of the road. So this would be a truck or something of the like wetting the road at suitable intervals.
How will that be enforced? Will we have to wait for a complaint from a neighbour to go to compliance?
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Enright, did you have a further question?
Thank you, Mayor. If there is no, getting back to the bollards, and if the intention is to alert people not to progress into the waterways rehabilitation area, would it be appropriate to have the bollards at a closer distance than 50 metres?
It may be appropriate, but there are no formal access points to this waterway rehabilitation area. You would have to traverse through rainforest. However, if that was the case, they have put them at 50 metres. Given the visibility using still bollards that are yellow in colour, it is my opinion that it is sufficient.
Thank you. Councillor, is that points of clarification? Thank you. Do you have others or right, continue?
In clarification of on page 20, it refers to the asset protection zone and the inner protection area. What does this refer to?
Sorry, what page again?
Page 20.
Those refer to bushfire clearing. So an inner protection area is an area where there's low retardant or low combustible planting that would be involved. And an outer protection area is where they clear understory underneath canopies to reduce the bushfire risk.
Thank you. Further question for me? In relation to bushfire and the bushfire attack level, I note that the cabins are selected for their higher risks and moderate risks for 3 cabins and higher risks for 7. My question is in relation to the water supply. It lists 5,000 litres of water per cabin as a static water supply for purpose of firefighting. Is this 5,000 litres separate to the domestic use for the cabins or included?
So included for each cabin is a 12.2 kilolitre water tank, of which 5,000 is reserved for firefighting purposes.
And how is it reserved? And I'm thinking is in a particularly dry time of drought when the rainfall collection will be minimal, how do we ensure that there is a full 5,000 there for that?
My understanding is that the water tanks have 2 outlet pipes. One outlet pipe is higher than the other, so you can't access it for firefighting purposes.
Great, a mechanical way to restrict that. That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further clarifications? Thank you, Councillor. Then we proceed to the introduction, GM, of the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillor. Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. The recommendation before you today is that 1, Council resolve to approve the development application MCU 20/032 for material change of use for 10 tourist cabins in respect of the following property. The property description of Lot 33, RP9 10372, Lot 1 on RP 101157, access easement A. The address of the property is 20B Guysman Street, Tambourine Mountain, and the site area is 50,840 square metres, and the proposal is tourist cabins for tourist use. That 2, the currency period of approval for this development approval is 6 years starting the day that this development approval takes effect. Refer to section 85, lapsing of approval at the end of currency period of the Planning Act 2016. And that 3, conditions of approval. A, the development permit is given for material change of use involving tourist cabins subject to the following conditions. And there are conditions outlined in the document up until condition 22. And that 4, the advisory notes as outlined, and then the A to D. Sorry, Mayor, I'm just scrolling through to G, and 5 further approvals are required as listed in the document A and B, and that the submitters be advised of the following: submitter advice approval, and 7, that administrative action, that decision notices be issued in accordance with S63 of the Planning Act 2016 to the applicant and submitters and referral agencies. And there's a lot of other information contained in between what I read, Mayor.
GM, could I just ask you to go back to the top and confirm the address is 28B, not 20B?
It is 28B. Sorry, did I say 20B?
Thank you.
I apologise.
Thank you for that clarification. Just to make sure that's accurate, councillors, that's all clear. I seek a mover. Councillor McConnell, any further questions or discussion, councillors? If not, I seek a seconder. Councillor West, Councillor McConnell, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Tambourine Mountain is basically an island, and as such is limited in space. I think this proposal and where it is for me is slightly borderline, but I do believe that it's a good use of the property and will bring some added patronage to the businesses on Main Street. So I will be definitely voting for this motion.
Councillors, anyone wishing to speak against the motion? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we will, no requirement to close then. Councillor McConnell, we shall put the motion. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Noting that item 10.3 has been withdrawn, we move to item 10.4 and we turn to the acting GM Asset and Environment Sustainability.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Morning, councillors, executive, and the listening gallery. Item 10.4 this morning is in regards to the petition regarding the renaming of the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens. I'll take the report as read, but as such, council has received some correspondence from the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Incorporated, requesting to rename the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain, Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. Council has done some investigating, council officers have done some investigating in regards to the history regarding the Botanic Gardens, and therefore the slight delay in bringing this report forward as we work through what the history of the gardens was. And the gardens has actually never been officially named in the first place. So it's operating just under a name that is formed by the group. The group can continue to do that. Okay, so if we want to officially name the gardens, we will need to go out to advertise as per council's road and place naming policy. We'll need to advertise for 4 weeks, which is the proposal to do. But the group itself can continue to call the operations of the gardens a name that they wish to use, basically, but that doesn't then become the formal name of the parcel of land. Okay, so the intention is that we will advertise this to the community for consultation. We'll look to go out in early May with for the next round of advertising through the local papers, both Tambourine, Beaudesert, Boona, so right across the region. We'll also have a Have Your Say survey on council's website for people to be able to address it on council's website as well. Yeah, but basically any questions regarding the matter, I'm happy to take.
Thank you. Councillors, any points for clarification? Firstly, Councillor Enright again.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for Acting GM for those for that introduction. My question is probably a clarification, is that the letter from the president of the organisation outlines, and I just wanted to clarify that it's changing the name of the gardens, in inverted commas, not the association that manages it.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, they're not changing the name of their group. They are changing the activity that is undertaken on the site. Yes, and proposing to change the name of the site formally.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor McConnell?
Thank you, Mayor. For the GM, who initially proposed the change?
The group, the Tambourine Mountains Garden Group.
Has there been any contact between officers and the group prior to them submitting to council the request for name change? Brief
discussions, and it was raised just in other meetings in regards to some of the other activities they were doing about their proposed name that they were looking to propose a name change.
So
yes.
No council officer went to the Botanic Gardens requesting or suggesting any proposal to change the name?
Definitely not. Include. No, officers didn't instigate the name change, but we have been in discussions where in other meetings where they have previously discussed that they were looking to change the name. Yes.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Further clarifications, councillors? If not, would you please introduce the recommendation? Thank you, Acting GM.
The recommendation is in three parts. Number one, that council note the desire of the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Incorporated to change the name of the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanical Gardens in the Scenic Rim. Number two, council note the petition objecting to the change of name proposed by the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Incorporated at their annual general meeting from the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanical Gardens in the Scenic Rim. And three, council note the commencement of public consultation as per council's naming of roads and places policy in response to the request for renaming the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim.
Thank you. Councillors, I seek a mover. Councillor McGuinness. Any further questions or discussion, Councillor Enright?
Mayor, can I propose a slight amendment to the recommendation, please?
Let's see.
And it's really just to, it refers to paragraph 1 of the recommendation with the deletion.
You mean part 1?
Part 1, yes.
Of the recommendation, yes.
With the deletion of the words prior to gardens, Tambourine Mountain Botanic. So it would read that council note the desire of the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Incorporated to change the name of the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanical Gardens in the Scenic Rim.
I'm just digesting that.
So you want to take out Tambourine Mountain Botanic before gardens?
To change the name.
So,
yes, that's correct. Only for clarification and to my question that it's only the gardens, not the entity. And I think by removing those three words perhaps further defines and clarifies the intent of the recommendation.
Councillor, I hear what you're proposing as the amendment. There may be some additional wording that will make that better, but I just ask the Acting GM if there's any additional clarity he can bring to that point.
It's worded that way, and I see where Councillor Enright's coming from. It is the same naming convention, but the group itself is known as Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Incorporated, so Inc. And the gardens at the moment are colloquially known as the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens. But so I see where Councillor Enright's coming from, where it looks like a bit of a double up, but it is clearly two different entities. Basically, it's the association and then the gardens as a separate piece.
To that discussion, and Councillor, before we come back to your amendment, in that discussion and in your introduction, the question rises, is it's technically actually not formally named the Botanic Gardens at present, is what you have said?
That is correct. There's no formal resolution of council to name the gardens initially.
So perhaps then the amendment should actually be not to change the name, but to formally name. Because there's no existing name. Councillor, would you consider that as your amendment?
Yes, I would, Mayor. I think it's important that it is clarified as in what is currently named, and it appears as though now that the information is that it hasn't been officially named by council. So it is probably the process of clarification in what is known as the Botanic Gardens into a definitive name for that area.
Councillor, just so I'm just wanting to get this back in process as a proposed amendment at the moment, Councillor McGuinness, and then we might have some more discussion of it. So we.
Yeah, I just wonder whether you use the words locally known as the Tambourine Mountain Botanical Gardens. So that's what it's known as. It mightn't be a name, but that's what the locals know it and term it as. And I think that might explain it better than either of the proposals.
So I think we're now working, we're helping you wordsmith your amendment, Councillor, if you're open to that assistance before you formally.
Yes, I am. Anything that provides greater clarity.
So it's not, so if I'm hearing, so it's to formally name. So sorry, we're just staying in part one. We're only talking about part one at the moment. So I think Councillor Enright's now proposing to formally name.
Can I just quickly jump in? The letter from the Incorporated Society doesn't mention formally change, formally name. We're noting, council note, the desire of the association. It's not formally change or formally give it the name. So we're changing their desire in their letter.
I don't believe that's so, Councillor. I believe from the understanding from the report, they had the view that it was formally named as the Botanic Gardens and they were changing what it was formally named at. What the investigation has shown is that what they understood as the formal name isn't the formal name.
Yeah, but that's not what they're, the first point is a desire for them to change the name. So if we say formally name it, that changes what their letter was. I can understand it's more, we've put in there a desire for them. They don't mention formally naming, they mention changing the name. So you've now gone from changing the name to formally name.
Well, Councillor, I note what you're suggesting. We need to deal with the amendment proposed by Councillor Enright first, and then we can come back to discuss that as part of once the amendment's tabled.
Mayor, can I just refer to the letter from Denby Browning? And in the first paragraph, toward the end of that paragraph, it states change the name of the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. And if we're using that as the basis to our motion, then their desire in the terminology is the gardens, colloquially known, into the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic. And I notice their request does not have botanical, it's botanic gardens in the Scenic Rim. So we might just need to...
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor. We'll have to amend that to botanic.
To botanic, yes. So I think in my amendment to point 1, I would be happy that, go back to my original, that it is changing the name of the gardens. So we've already determined that Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens is what we're talking about. We refer to the reference of the letter from the President, and the request or the desire is that the change of the name of the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim.
So undo delete on that. Yes, and you remove the formally, I believe, is the councillor's request.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll deal with that first, and then we'll talk about another amendment that will be required as a result of that. So we have an amendment to proposed by Councillor Enright, as just discussed, to part 1 of the recommendation. We have a seconder. Councillor West, wish to speak any further to it, Councillor Enright?
Look, not the point really for myself is to ensure that there is clarity both now and into the future as to the background as to what we are proposing at this stage. So I'm happy with that revised wording.
Okay, anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak additionally? If not, we put the amendment as indicated by Councillor Enright to part 1 of the recommendation. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Now, before we move to, we still haven't got a seconder to the original motion. However, sorry, Councillor McConnell.
Yeah, the botanic and botanical are in the other two, 2 and 3.
Yep. So those, we'll get those pieces corrected in a moment. However, can we go back and get a seconder, please, to the original motion? Councillor Enright. Now we can move to other amendments. Any other discussion or questions? I believe there is an amendment needed to point 3 because it now doesn't have the completeness. So I believe there's an administrative amendment first off that Councillor McConnell, you may wish to make note of.
Yeah, just an administrational that there's just some wording in there with botanical and botanic. It's only botanic. I don't know if that needs a motion or is that just a...
we should deal with it as an amendment because we're correcting the wording in those 2 other places. So
okay, move a motion that the word botanical...
Moving an amendment.
Move an amendment to the motion that the word botanical be removed and botanic be used.
In parts 2 and 3, where applicable. Okay. Seconder to that. Yep. Seconded by Councillor West. Any further discussion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Righto. Anybody wishing to speak against? Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I believe there's now a third amendment required in part 3 because we've jumped from a request in part 1 that we're noting into a formal process in part 3. So it's actually, we are not responding to a request to rename anything. So I believe the amendment to part 3 is in response to the request from the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Inc., which requires the formal naming, or which requests the formal naming. So in part 3, so council note the commencement of public consultation. You lost me there. You bounce around. As per council's naming of roads and places policy, in response to the request by the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Inc., which will require the formal naming of the gardens to Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. I believe that provides the correct technical transition from a letter of request into a formal process. I am proposing that amendment from the chair, seeking a seconder. Councillor West, I think I've spoken to it enough. Anyone wishing to speak against?
Just waiting on the motion to come back up, Mayor. I can only speak against.
Well, at the moment, you can be able to speak additionally in a moment.
Okay.
No one against speak additionally?
It seems to be taken for granted in note 3 that which will require the formal naming of the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. If we're going out for public consultation, that may not be the name.
I understand your concern. That's why when I was putting it together earlier, that was the time to amend the wording. Yeah. We will need to vote on this and then decide if we want to make another amendment to it. Okay. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried.
Better call a division on that one, please, Mayor.
Okay. So those for...
we just need to catch up.
So just maintain order while we get the system in place. For apologies to the gallery, we're just dealing with the technical challenges of the system. Now, for Mayor Division 3, 4 and 6. And against Division 2 and 5. Now, have we caught up? Now, are there further amendments proposed? Councillor McCollum?
I don't believe, because we've moved that we can change that. Is that correct?
Ask the question. We can make further amendment before we get to the final.
So we can make an amendment to the amendment?
Just propose.
I think it would be a new amendment.
It would be a new amendment.
Yeah, if I can I ask the GM?
You can ask the question.
GM, just the public consultation will provide other names, or are we only going to vote on that, or will people only respond to that name?
Okay, so we've only had a request from the group to name it as this name that we're proposing, okay? As part of the policy and part of the consultation process, people can either go for or against that name or propose alternative names within rationale for the gardens. So in our consultation piece, and especially on our Have Your Say on the website, there will be a comment. There's a yes and a no, but there's also a comments section where people can either propose an alternative name or give feedback on why they voted yes or no. But because the group has specifically requested this name, that is the name that we have to take forward in the advertising, because that's what we've received, is the request to name the gardens this name. So that's what we're advertising. We're advertising that is going to be known as Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. Okay, because that's the request we've received from the community so far.
And the results of that consultation would be brought back for Ford Council for a subsequent decision.
That is correct, yeah. So we gather all the feedback from the community, and then a report comes back to council at a future date for council to vote on whether to accept the name change or not.
So based on that explanation, this is technically correct, and then the other feedback would be forthcoming.
Okay, I'm happy with it, Mayor.
So because it sits within the policy process. Okay, we now return to the amended version, which has amendment to part 1 and amendment to part 2 and 3, and then a further amendment to part 3. Yep. Yep. It just says it in full, councillor. Is that your concern?
Thank you, Mayor,
Yep.
and it's fixed now.
It's just either or. Okay, councillors, we will ask, just for the benefit of everyone not with us and able to see it on screen, if the GM, if we could just reread the, I'm going to get my head there. So the motion that we now have proposed with amendments is before us, and we did have a mover and seconder. We'll have to seek their support for the amendments to remain as the mover and seconder. Councillor McGuinness, Councillor Enright are happy with that. So we can proceed with the motion in the three parts with the amendments. I'll read them. I'll spare the acting GM. That firstly, in 1, council note the desire of the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Inc. to change the name of the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. 2, council note the petition objecting to the change of name proposed by the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Inc. at their annual general meeting from the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. And 3, council note the commencement of public consultation as per council's naming of roads and places policy in response to the request by the Tambourine Mountain Botanic Gardens Inc., which will require a formal naming of the gardens to the Tambourine Mountain Regional Botanic Gardens in the Scenic Rim. That is moved and seconded. Councillor McGuinness, did you wish to speak further?
Yeah, I need to add, Mayor, that it's been on the board for almost 6 months now, and we know with COVID and everything else, it has slowed the process down slightly. But I give credit to the committee up there, are very passionate about a number of things and probably over passionate sometimes, but I think it's a good thing, and we go out to consultation and be interested to see what feedback we do get.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I also just wanted to acknowledge the Botanical Gardens Inc. group for their passion with these gardens over the years. They've certainly looked after them so very well. And it's just interesting that sometimes we find when these requests come in, as has happened with another sporting ground not too far away, that the community have colloquially named an area, but in fact, when we look into it, it's never really formally been named. So this will just put the process in a formal fashion.
Thank you. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we will put the motion. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, acting GM. Councillors, I note the time and propose that we will in fact adjourn for a brief break and then return to deal with the other matters before us today. So we will adjourn and return at 10 to 11. Thank you. Thank you to those in the gallery. Please, we'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back, councillors and executive, and welcome back to those joining us in the digital gallery. We turn to item 10.5 of today's agenda, and GM Council Sustainability, we turn to you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors, staff and the virtual public gallery. Item 10.5 details Council's financial position as at 31st of March 2021. And I'll refer to page 1 of 8 of the attachment, or page 103 of the agenda, which is an executive summary, and just highlight some of the key metrics for the month of March. What is indicated there is that there is a net operating surplus of 5.93 million. And this result is a combination of budgeted revenue being, as indicated in the report, 0.614 million higher,
and budgeted operating expenditure being under expended by 5.32 million. Before going into the other areas, I'll take the time to provide some further information around these budget variances to allow further insight. Of the $5.32 million underspend in the budget, 4.546 million relates to materials and services, and that's included for in page 6 of 8 of the report, or page 107 of the agenda, and this is note 4, which outlines the sorry, it's the next page, page 6 of 8 of the attached report, or page 108 of the agenda, and it relates to notes 4, notes to financial statements, and you can see there what I spoke about the 4.56 in materials and services. You can see the underspend there, and what contributes to that underspend. The first one off the top of the list there is there's an underspend of the year-to-date budget around economic development. What that relates to, Mr. Mayor and Councillors, is there's a number of included in that budget. There's a number of funded activities, and those are being delivered towards the latter part of the year. And also there's some projects that have yet to be finalised. One thing that's probably important to point out is these reports are the year-to-date actuals, and they don't include the committed costs. If you go into the system and look at what's being committed towards those costs, the differences in those variations reduces dramatically. For example, in that economic development, if you were to add the committed costs, there's another 350,000 of committed costs, which basically reduces half of that underspend, and then the rest of that is related to a couple of grant-related projects, the Long Sunset and the likes, and they've sort of been deferred towards the latter part.
And if I could comment, and some of the projects aren't due for delivery until this last quarter, such as Eat a Local Week, for example.
The next item, Councillors, is the 839,000 in additional. That's internal plant hire recovery. So that's revenue that's generated by the fleet activity that charges other areas in the budgets. Now, when we were looking, when we set the budget in for 2021, there was a significant reduction in the anticipated internal plant hire revenues, and that was just indicative of the reduced revenues and what. But obviously, as what we've seen with operating and capital grants funding that's come in, some of that activities has resulted in higher plant hire recoveries, and that they may be fixed up in the March budget review that will progress further with council in due course. Legal expenses, there's an underspend there of 234. That's just indicative of where we are. There's a set budget amount for legal expenses, and I might add, this legal expenses relates to our main area in planning and development. As with anything, it's indicative of the current status. Maintenance and operations, there's another spend there of 1.168 million, and then that's again, there's a number of throughout the year, number of activities that have either been put on hold or put off in terms of the maintenance side of things, or as we're getting out of the back end of the COVID, where the number of the parks and gardens resulted in them being closed off or not accessed. We're looking into, obviously, again, as part of the March budget review, to look into those and see whether there's any areas for updating. And again, there is staging of that, and if I include the big portion of that is council's resheeting program. Yeah, and as indicated before, there's a big proportion of that as to the gravel resheeting, and one of the issues with that is some of them with the recent rain event, there's potential there for what they commonly known as damage on damage. So that may be there's an ability to put in an application for that to be repaired under the event that just that occurred. Grant funded expenditure, again, that's those major ones that have come in where there's an underspend in them. Again, it's a timing matter. And if I was to put there's a committed cost there of 386,000 in that certainly improves the position a little bit. And these grant funded ones are the bigger ones that have come in throughout the year, the drought communities, the LERP, Queensland associated with the bushfires. There's also a little bit there associated with the resilient rivers. So that's in the materials and services side of things, and sorry, the other materials and services. Again, that relates to some minor activities around asset management, promotion and program development. And if you were to add the committed costs onto that, it would actually be 81.43% of the total budget. So, you know, the committed costs counted on that would show a more favourable line item in there. I go back to page 3 of 8 of the report, Mr. Mayor, the Statement of Comprehensive Income, and I've just gone through the note 4 there, the variance around the materials and services of 4.56. I'll pay some attention to the employee expenses of 1.743 million that appears to be an underspend. What that relates to is a number of that's not just the wages that's paid to employees, but there's a number of the on costs and salaries and wages components of that, along with the around 300,000 of staff training and conference attendance that hasn't been utilised due to one reason or the other. But of that 1.73 million, about 1 million of it relates to the key areas where there are key vacancies, and that's in the asset environment, sustainability, and customer and regional prosperity. So whilst there is it's a bit of a catch-22, whilst there certainly is a noted underspend in some of the delivery of some of the budget areas, it should be noted that you know, with the current level of staffing, that and as highlighted in the previous month's report around the operational plan, yeah, council is continuing to deliver the services and some key projects. So it should be yeah, that's one to point out, that whilst we do have a number of key vacancies, you know, council is still maintaining deliverables of our key services. So that explains the variances in that operating surplus. Yeah, we've got a further 3 months in the financial year as we lead up into the 21-22 budget, and as incorporated as part of the March budget review. Further details around some of those underspends and what the trend will be, try and forecast through till 30th of June will be provided to council in due course. Part of the normal other metrics, Mr. Mayor, that I'd like to highlight is page 7 of 8 of the attachment, or page 109 of the agenda. Just item 7 there, the council expenditure by location. Since the previous month, there's been $5.9 million in contestable expenditure that's been incurred by council through its normal operations, and highlight of that is 1.9 million has been spent on Scenic Rim listed services and businesses, equating to still around 32.2% of the total expenditure, which is we're continuing to maintain a fair proportion of where we can expenditure on local businesses. The following page, outstanding rates and debtors, just a quick comparison again since the previous month, and the a further $1.42 million in revenues come in. to reduce that total down to total outstanding to 5.62 million, compared to previous periods. We were looking at around $3.792 million of the January 2021 levy being outstanding, compared to the January 2020 levy. That was 4.143 million. So there's an improvement there in corresponding periods of around 351,000. So continuing to monitor the associated impacts with COVID and other economic factors as we progress into the respective budget deliberations. And lastly, Mr. just a touch on the capital expenditure. It is noted there that there's a behind 8.725 million. Again, factoring in the actuals there on page 2 of 8, you can see the blue column there. When you add the actuals and the committed costs, we're actually on target. But as we've started our budget deliberation with officers, we are looking at a better way of reporting the capital. We are noting that there are a number of key capital projects that the current style of reporting might not necessarily be suited to it, and these are ones where they may go over more than 12 months. So what we're showing there is that council's committed the funding the projects for the 12 months, but the actual delivery of some of those projects could be beyond the financial year, and you really they're behind the 8 ball already in terms of effective reporting for those particular projects. So in the upcoming budget discussions, we will look at a better way to sort of reflect that, so it's indicative of the delivery on the ground as well as a financial overlay, and not necessarily just looking at the financial overlay. Mr. Mayor, Councillors, that's my summary. Certainly open the floor for any other clarifications should they be required.
Thank you. Thank you for those additional points to what's in the report. Councillors, clarifications to the report? Questions to clarify? If I may just start with one, to that last comment concerning capital. The clarification is there are, can I confirm what I heard you saying and just clarify if I'm incorrect? There are projects that run greater than 12 months, but which could actually then transcend 3 financial years by virtue of that. However, our reporting process requires them to be shown within a 12-month window. That's the nature of how our accounting has to operate.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The total budget should be committed for by the council at that particular time. We've got a classic example at the moment as part of our fleet replacement budget, and due to external factors, we're unable. The fleet operations need to be confident that money has been provided there by council. Now, they've placed the order for those particular fleet replacements, and it's not just us, but there's a global issue at the moment in terms of supply. So they'll be ordered in 2021, but they won't necessarily be delivered in this year. They'll probably be delivered the next financial year, but you have to have the money on there to be able to commit to those orders, and that's the issue we see. And similar to some of those other projects, there are some factors that, through approvals and sourcing of labour and materials, that could delay some projects over a span of financial years. But we will look at how that's best reflected in these upcoming reporting to give it a better indication. But purely from a financial aspects, yes, the project needs to be fully funded and committed to at that point in time in the budget.
Thank you. A further clarification. There are a number of major pieces of work that we rely on grant funding for. Many of those programs, am I correct in clarifying that Many of them have 2-year funding windows. Some of them have shorter timeframes, but many of them have 2-year funding windows. And again, even where they might have a 12-month window, that can run across 2 financial years.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. And we recently, at the previous meeting, endorsed some projects to be submitted towards the Queensland Government Resilience Funding, or formerly known as the SEQ Works for Queensland round, where that spans over a number of financial years, and with the projects to be delivered, by that period. However, by 30 June 2024. However, in terms of phasing it, once approval signed off, effectively they'll provide 50% of the funding up front, which sort of skews our reporting again, and that we've got the money, yet we may not spend that towards the back end of that 2024. But certainly look at use the engineering terminology, the Gantt chart to show those delivery and those milestones indicative, not just the financial factor being expended.
Thank you. Councillors, other points of clarification? Okay. So, Councillor McConnell, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to the GM, just in regards to fees, operating in your executive summary, operating revenue, we're ahead by 614,000. Largely due to increased revenue from plumbing certification and other building related fees. Could we get some advice on that, please? Oh, sorry, page 103 in your executive summary.
Yep, page 103. And if I refer the councillors to page 107 of the agenda, or page 5 of the report, it gives a further breakdown of under note 2, fees and charges analysis. You can see what we originally budgeted for. The full year budget for plumbing certification was 706,000. The year-to-date budget, or in terms of staging, that should be 537,000. But you can see that year-to-date the actual shows 909. So a better than expected 371, and I think that's and I'll let our the GM Council of Regional Prosperity, but I think that's sign of we looked at reviewed the potential revenue and on the back of COVID, but it's showing that there seems to be a shining light within the Scenic Rim.
Yes, thank you, councillors, and we have seen an influx of applications such as this, and I think the last count officers told me they thought there was a 70% increase to the previous financial year in plumbing and building applications, and we're seeing a lot of developers now coming through that are wanting to get their applications processed and to get their developments underway, and it's really encouraging at the moment just to see how much of that is surfacing here in the Scenic Rim, which seems to be a very attractive destination for people to relocate.
Further to that, Councillor McConnell, you can see there in other building and property related of 234 from a rating perspective. The team are continuing to receive rate searches and process property transfers. So there is a significant activity associated with that seems to be favourable in the Scenic Rim. The interest is certainly still out there.
Thank you. Further clarification?
Thank you.
Councillor Enright, did you have a clarification apart from the challenge of your microphone?
No, Matt, just doing some diagnostic work on the PA system.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further clarifications, can we move to the recommendation, please, GM?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation for item 10.5 is that Council endorse the monthly financial report for March 2021.
Thank you. I seek a mover. Councillor Enright. Any further questions or discussion, councillors? If not, I seek a seconder. Councillor West. Councillor Knight, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank the GM for Council Sustainability, Oliver, for giving that detail and understanding of the many moving parts that work behind a financial statement. I think that provides us and to the listening audience a greater understanding of the challenge of dealing with everything that continually changes, but a good snapshot of where we are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move to item 10.6. GM, we're back with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10.6 is Queensland Audit Office update. I know at the time it's probably a little premature, this one, but this one's was really good just to get out there for public awareness around some of the services that the Queensland Audit Office undertakes, and those not familiar with the Queensland Audit Office. The Queensland Audit Office undertake the external audit of council to ensure how the ratepayer funds are appropriated accordingly, and to ensure the risk aspects in terms of assessing to make sure council has effective controls are in place. And it should be noted that more recently the Queensland Audit Office update for 1920 financial year has just been released, so I will table that at a future report. But this particular update relates to a service that the Queensland Audit Office provides, and it's called Request for Audits. And as the attachment clearly indicates, if there are concerns of any known or perceived untowards or misappropriation of any type that people may or could have evidence pertaining to, certainly the Queensland Audit Office have the vehicle to undertake those audits. Council is subjected to an annual audit, a very comprehensive audit at a great cost to the community, and we certainly pride ourselves on meeting all those objectives of the audit, and certainly to the extent that council maintains its assurance to the public that that controls are in place and that prudent financial management is undertaken. That's sort of that, Mr. Mayor. It's a clarification.
Thank you. It is it's an advisory report noted. Any clarification questions, councillors? Councillor West.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Oliver, I just wondered, presumably, is this an annual audit? Is it? Is that what happens? Just for those at home who may not be aware, this is an annual. Where are we?
So you're referring to what's in the report, councillor?
Yes, I am. So the Audit Office put out this, sorry, they do this on an annual basis, or does it go in with the financial year?
It's these are for any time. So if anyone is requesting an audit that they don't believe council is providing or is transparent on, certainly a request through the Queensland Audit Office can be affected. And certainly they'll, once contacted, the Queensland Audit Office will require particular information, and then we'll based on the basis of that, seek cooperation from council to undertake the respective audits.
And do they make it public? Like, do they do a public? Will they put this out for the public when it's, is it?
To an extent, when the public or when people go to the public website, the Queensland Audit Office, I note there for 2021 that there have been 2 requests for councils within Queensland. One of those was state government funding to the Quandamuka Uralburali Aboriginal Corporation, and the other one was community facilities owned by Cassowary Coast. So someone, members of the community or a council or elected member have requested a audit through the QAO to be undertaken on those for that particular reasons as prescribed. They will only publish certain information that don't, and obviously if the audit does find any untowards or any of that that type, appropriate action would be undertaken by the Queensland Audit Office to refer those appropriately to either the governing bodies. But it is available anytime. The external audit that's undertaken on an annual basis is our our financial year external audit.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other points for clarification, councillors? It's good to see that opportunity there and that reinforcement of confidence in the process. That's what the independent audit is there for. If there are no other questions, GM, please introduce the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is in two parts. So the recommendation that 1, Council note the advice from the Auditor General highlighting the service of requests for audits that Queensland Audit Office provides, and 2, Council note the advice from the Auditor General that requests for audit summaries received from elected members will now be published on the Queensland Audit Office website.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, I seek a mover. Councillor McConnell, any further questions or discussion? Councillors, I seek a seconder. Councillor McGuinness, wishing to speak further, Councillor McConnell?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the end of the agenda for the ordinary meeting today. There are no confidential items to be considered on this occasion. Thank you to those who joined us today through the digital gallery. We shall bid you good day, and thank you, councillors. Thank you, executive, and I now close the meeting.